Welcome to the DDS Faith Podcast, where Jeremy can't grow hair and anonymous plaints will get you nowhere.
You know, I'm glad you had the decency to put a hat on.
So you can't grab it this time.
Well, I'm just going to tell you, anytime you do the Farrah Fawcett, Charlie's Angels hair flick, I'm going to punch you right in the throat.
Who's Farrah Fawcett?
I'm going to punch you right in the throat right now.
I really don't know who that is. All right.
Let's move on.
I read the notes multiple times.
Yeah,
Did
Jeremy
you know-
got the notes and said, "What is this?"
I was trying to
Dirtbag.
trigger you. I knew exactly what it was.
All right. So
Quit trying to take a page out of my book.
You
okay?
want me to ask
It
you.
would be kind of funny if you asked me and I just went like, and just looked at you. So guest speaker, what are we talking about today?
All right, permanent guest. What are we? That was a little. That was a little. That was a little mean, and hateful, wasn't it?
I don't like some hair jealousy.
Well, because that's exactly what it is.
Hair gel.
All right, go ahead, bud.
Hair gel, get it?
All right.
Jealousy, gel.
I don't use gel.
All right. So as the newest member of the panel now.
Yes, guest
Yes.
speaker.
Yes. Permanent guest.
Permanent guest speaker.
Can I just be like the permanent
That
guest?
was good.
It was good.
Roll with that.
You're on the website, Jeremy. You can't be a guest.
Yeah, you're.
Oh, why are you here?
I'm the permanent guest here.
Permanent
Yeah.
guest?
We can't find anybody else that wants to talk to us.
What are we talking about tonight?
So tonight I wanted to talk about simplifying the church. So right now what I've noticed is that the church tends to copy the world a lot. And
Meaning?
we compete with the world. So like we do different kinds of sports. We do the same things as the rest of the world does. So like we do upward basketball. And I know it's a good thing. I'm not saying these things are bad. But we're trying to attract people to come to our church by using secular things like basketball or volleyball or games at a youth ministry or whatever. And it's all
Entertainment.
Exactly. It's all about entertainment. It's all about, well, let's just give kids a good place to be so they don't drink alcohol. And it's like, oh, well, good job. They don't drink alcohol, but they're still going to hell because they don't know the gospel.
Until they leave the event.
Exactly. And then they just continue on with whatever they want to do.
So it's kind of a continuation,
Right.
a little bit of what we talked about last time,
So,
which was
well,
Yes.
attractional
Yes.
versus
Yes.
having an attraction mindset, y'all come, versus a missional mindset of
Yes,
go.
we should be training the people in the church to go, not trying to get people to come to the church.
Right.
Well, what you just touched on is something that I know as fifth quarters, which is, I think we touched on that in
Yeah, we
the first
did.
episode I was in, but it's like essentially a safe hangout for high schoolers
Right.
and middle schoolers after a high school football game on Friday nights from like 9 to midnight.
And see, the problem with that is that's not the mission of the church. Now, that may be the mission. I mean, it's a great thing. Listen, keeping kids out of trouble, super great thing. But we have other kinds of charities and nonprofits that do that. The church is not for that.
Well, and when they're there, are you feeding them? Not literal food, but like, are you spiritually feeding them at all?
Right.
Or are you just giving them a basketball court
Exactly.
to play on or something like that?
I'd say most of the time it's probably just playing games and stuff. What's interesting in the years that I've taught in youth ministry, I've noticed that students have two sets of friends. They have their regular friends and then they have their church friends. And they don't really associate with their church friends outside of church. And it's because all they've made is superficial relationships with each other instead of actually jumping into the word together and actually finding something, I'm only your friend because my parents made me come to church here.
That's what I was about to say.
I am your friend under circumstance only.
When as soon as the parents stop making them go to church, they don't hardly ever talk to those
Exactly.
church friends.
Exactly.
And then some of them do. Like if it's a solid, like I have a lot of friends that I've grown up with in church that I'm still great
Right.
friends with.
Right.
But you'll notice who they're there for whenever they're no longer being forced to go to that church and they
Yes.
don't talk to those people anymore.
Yes.
I always said once they got their driver's license.
Yep.
And then they made the decision. They weren't,
Right.
mom and dad didn't make them.
So part of that is, parents should make their kids go to church. Absolutely. But it needs to be more than that. parents just shouldn't be making their kids go to church. They need to make them get in the Word. Actually read their Bible every day. Actually pray. Ask their how often have you been asked, what's God doing in your life? What's God teaching you right now? You know, like I've been around. I've gone to churches to where I've asked that question. Like, what? What are you talking about? Like, have you never been asked that before? Like, what's going on? Like, you have to have some sort of relationship that matters. It can't just be, oh, I show up to church. Or the parents that just, I make my kids go to church, but I don't make them get into the Word. I don't, we don't sit down and do a Bible study together. You know, I've been really convicted about that lately with my family. If you are expecting the church to take care of your youth and your children, it's not going to happen. They only have them 2 days a week, maximum 2 days a week.
For what, 2 or 3
Yeah,
hours?
for just a couple of hours, and it's
Well,
like you
and-
have them all week.
One of those days a week isn't even really with the youth pastor or whatever you have at that church. Is in the
Right.
sanctuary with the lead pastor. And
Right. And a lot of times those are the shallowest sermons you hear, because nobody really wants to dive deep into the Scripture.
Well, when you're preaching to such a large spectrum of people,
Right.
all from in different spiritual maturities, and you
Yep.
don't want to really get too deep because this person might not understand it or it, you know.
And see, that only happens because we've changed the mission of the church. We've changed the mission of the church from go therefore and make disciples to, hey, get as many people as we can in here, and let's really focus on the numbers and get people saved. And it's like, you need both. You need people getting saved and you need discipleship. You can't have one without the other.
Right. But the way you get people in the door, you know, hey, let's have an event.
Right.
Let's,
Right. But they're coming for the event.
they're coming for the event, not...
And it's bait is what it is. I mean, you know, Jesus says, I'll make you fishers of men. And we've come up with different kinds of bait. Okay, but we're not trying to trick fish. You know, we need a different kind of bait. We need the bait of Jesus, not upward basketball or, hey, look at the games that we play, or hey, we're doing a pizza night. You know, I'm not saying you can't do those things. But if
Those things have their purpose.
yes, absolutely. They're good things. I've done plenty of those things, and I think they're great. But we need to be careful on what we focus on, because like a lot of times we say, oh, we've got to do this so we can get people saved. But it's like, hold on. It's the Holy Spirit that saves, not your program, not the songs that you sing, not the sermons that are being preached. The Holy Spirit.
Somewhere along the way, we forgot that it's the Spirit that does the actual
Right.
saving, because evangelicals, that's the term, evangelize.
Yeah.
And if I'm trying to save your soul and you don't accept Christ by the end of our conversation, I have failed.
Right. And that's not right.
That's not what Jesus just said. Plant the seed,
Yep.
share the gospel, and
I'll
I'll do the rest.
Yeah, one of the phrases that I use all the time, it is, our job is to present the gospel, and it is God's job to persuade. Nobody should have the burden on them to save people, because you can't. There's nothing you can do. There's absolutely nothing you can do.
Like how many pastors out there get disappointed when people don't come to the altar?
Oh, absolutely. I know that whenever I first started, it would upset me when people wouldn't ask questions or do stuff. I'm like, what did I do wrong? You know, and it's like, that's not what Christianity is all about.
Well,
We've got this distorted view of church. Church is the body of Christ. It's so much deeper than a Sunday service or a Wednesday night service that you go to.
Well, I'm sure there's many times where you got excited whenever somebody was asking questions, or even like a septic Christ,
Absolutely.
or you could tell they're growing deeper like that.
Yes.
That gives you a sense of, like maybe there is something going on right. However, it's important not to be discouraged when the opposite is happening. If you feel like you're doing things how you should be doing them, then there shouldn't be any discouragement there.
Exactly. It should never be about numbers. It should never be about numbers.
Like you've been talking about how like the church tries to attract people, and we almost go with the way the world is going.
Yeah.
We use worldly things to attract people. And I think that also applies to your own Christian walk, because like 1 John 2:15 talks about how you shouldn't love the world and the things of the world. And
Right.
so even like in your own Christian walk, it's okay to be in the world and like dwell in it, but you shouldn't be taking part in worldly things.
You shouldn't be in love with the
Right.
world. It's okay. Like it's okay to go play sports, go play baseball, go play golf, whatever you want to do. That's fine, but don't make it your idol. That's what we need to focus on.
Well, and a lot of churches will say, our goal, because anytime somebody's planning an event, the first question should be, what is the purpose?
Exactly.
Why are we doing this? And if it has nothing to do with presenting the gospel or sharing Jesus, that doesn't really need to be done.
Right.
And they're like, oh no, we're going to bring people in. They're going to hear this. So, okay, the gospel is a ball. I'm looking at that little plastic ball right there on the floor. So, and it'd be nice if I had somebody who would hand me the plastic ball.
It's funny because I've been looking for that ball. I'm glad you found it.
Yes.
Off camera. Good catch.
So here's the gospel.
Uh-huh.
And now we're going to wrap it up in this big box and put shiny wrapping paper on it and a big bow, and somewhere within all the packaging, because I've been guilty. I mean, I can put on an event.
Yeah.
We call them Singspirations
Right.
or concerts.
It's almost like we're tricking people into the gospel.
Right.
And that's what I kind of was meaning about the bait that we use. It's like we're tricking people with the gospel. Here's some worldly things to get you over here. Come on. And it's like, wait a minute. That's not what we're supposed to be doing. That's not. We need to change how we do church, because right now church has gotten way too complicated, and it's gotten to be this churches. If you say church, everybody's thinking Sunday morning service.
Right.
Almost everybody is thinking that. But that's not what the church is. That's just the corporate worship that we do. The church is the body of believers that come together and we worship together, but we study together, we hold each other accountable, we make disciples.
Well, and you're not going to compete with the world. Sports league, Little League has more money.
Yep.
Better uniforms.
Yep.
When it comes to concerts and
And,
things, I'm not going to be able to compete with anything that Disney or the
Right.
Super Bowl's putting
Yep.
on for halftime.
Better
or-
viewability as well.
Yes.
So nobody's going to want to play upward basketball. They're going to want to go do their travel ball because they want to be noticed by somebody. Like that's their purpose behind it.
My whole thing was, instead of taking those things and presenting Jesus through those things, like if you're on a travel team or you're whatever your job is, how can you go to your job, play your sport, do whatever activity it is? How can you go there and show Jesus to those people?
Exactly. But instead, we're like, oh, everybody come here. Let's do, and I'm picking on Upward basketball, and again, nothing against Upward. But we're trying to get everybody to come to Upward, and we wonder, why isn't anybody coming? Well, because they're playing at their schools, they're playing travel ball, and they're playing these other things.
Right.
And we can't compete with that. And we need to stop trying to compete with that. We need to, let's do with what we know, what we're good at, which is the gospel, actually making disciples, and
equipping.
And then guess what? When you've equipped them, and they go on their travel ball team, just like you were saying, they go evangelize to them, and they make disciples there.
Right.
Instead of making a bunch of just whatever you get in a little upper basketball team.
Well, when you're doing things like that, theoretically, you're going to draw people that are already Christians.
Exactly.
Like, you're not drawing anybody that actually really needs
Right,
that.
right.
Like, and you could in, like, some rare scenarios. But,
Yeah.
based on what I've seen, it's all people that are already actively involved in that church.
Well, and I have a friend who is a professional worship leader, recording artist, and earlier this year put out a new album of secular music. Now it's
Yeah.
the old Frank Sinatra type
Yeah.
standards and stuff. But I remember a conversation we had a few months prior to this record coming out, and one of the things that he said was, I only sing to church people. Like, he's leading worship in churches, he's leading worship for conferences and things, and he said, his heart for evangelism, has, in the last year or so, he's wanted to do more evangelism. So with this new album and doing the more secular type things, he can get into like civic centers,
Yeah.
and he can play with orchestras, community orchestras
Right.
and things.
And many people in the church are going to just look down on that, like, oh, how could you go secular like that? But it's like, actually, I have a bigger audience now.
Right.
That I can actually
Yeah,
evangelize to.
a bigger platform.
Yeah.
You know, I remember because it was big news when Kanye West converted to Christianity.
Right.
And I remember having conversations with a lot of people who just thought, oh, it was fake. He's
Right.
just doing that for the media. And I said, what if it's genuine?
Exactly.
Look at the platform that
Right.
man has.
And who are you to ask that question, to say that?
Right.
Like, I mean, maybe he's saved, maybe he's not, but that's not for me to say.
No, it's not.
You
That's
know?
between him and the Lord. But he was getting on a stage in front of thousands and
Yeah.
thousands of people proclaiming Jesus as his Savior.
Exactly.
And that's what my friend is doing with this project. That now he's still doing church services and conferences and things, but as he has opportunity to go and do the orchestral stuff and be in a secular environment, he can plant a seed
Yeah.
with people that would never darken the door of a church service or a Christian Bible conference.
Well, just what I've noticed in my years of ministry is I have been at a clear disadvantage because I had no idea what the world was like because I was shrouded in Christianity. Because all I saw, guess what? I go to work, Christians. You know, that's just what I did. So it's like I would have to go out specifically to evangelize versus just going to my work. And you know,
Well, you told a story recently in the car. I think you were working at Best Buy, and this woman asked you, why you were so.
Yeah.
Tell that story.
yeah. So I actually started working at Best Buy like 2 days before Black Friday, so that was fun. But anyway, I ended up working there, and I loved it. It was fun. You know, I enjoyed it. And this lady who ended up being a good friend of mine, she asked me a question one day because she was just like, "How are you doing this? Every day you come into work." Every day
It was going to anyway.
She says, like, every day you come into work, bad things happen, and you just have a smile on your face. You just always have joy. Why is that? And I said, well, let me tell you why. And I told her about Jesus.
It's funny how she used the word joy and not happiness.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It was
Man,
really interesting.
Such a common misconception I didn't realize until probably like a year or two ago was like joy isn't like an action. It's almost like a choice. Like, happiness is a feeling that could come from joy.
Joy is a state of mind. And, you know, I mean, Paul was not happy when he was in prison. You know, there were people that were tortured, and then it's like they were not happy, but they still had joy. So,
Suffering, that would be a good topic.
yeah, we'll talk about that, I'm sure.
But
I
like,
could do a whole season on suffering.
well, what would you know?
So,
You would be surprised.
here's another issue with churches trying to use secular things to advance the gospel, essentially. So we end up competing with the world, and we're going to lose. But here's the thing. Students are already so distracted. They have so much going on. Guys, I had a kindergartner last year. She had homework every single day. A kindergartner. And it's like, I can't imagine what it's like in middle school and high school.
If only you had somebody on here that was like just out of high school.
Oh, yeah. So what's
I
it
can-
like?
So,
Our new permanent guest.
so when I was
Fair
in high
faucet.
school, all 4 years I played like the hardest, roughest sport out there, golf.
Wow.
Anyway, so I played that, and like in the fall, which is the season for that, like competitive
Yeah.
season, every 4 or 5 days a week, every day I was at school from 7:45 to 2:45, and then practicing from then till probably 6.
Yep.
Then you get home, you have your workload, you have church, whatever. You stay busy. I have 2 brothers that are still in high school. One of them plays football. One of them plays baseball.
Yeah.
Every day practice, Friday games, baseball. There's multiple games a week. Like
It's like the only day they get off is Saturday.
Yes,
And sometimes they don't even get that.
Or band.
Oh,
Man,
yeah.
you were in band, and I know multiple kids that are in band right now, and like they are busier than any sport out there.
In the summer we did 9 to 9. You know,
Yeah, that's what they do.
Golly.
On Saturdays.
Yep.
And like that, my generation is so busy with that stuff that it's just such a distraction from church things. And
Yes.
It's like if you can ground yourself in the spirit and like be genuinely attached to the vine, like the true vine, then take that into your sports or into your band or at school, and that is your mission field right there.
And see, as pastors, I know how many times I got so frustrated whenever students had something secular that they had going on to miss church.
And sometimes
and-
that happens.
Yeah.
Oh, it
Every time
bothered
somebody
me.
would say, "Hey, I'm not going to make it to choir practice tonight because their kid had some ball game or
Right.
band event,"
Right.
and I'd just be like,
Well,
Yeah.
and like sometimes that's, there's not a whole lot you can do.
No.
Sometimes.
Right. You do have
but-
to make your priorities. But here's the thing. This whole concept of you need to be at the church every time the doors are open needs to go away. Either that or the doors don't need to be open all the time. If the doors are open all the time, then what we become this hospital for the sick. And it's all about just hurting people, and it's more of a nonprofit organization or a charity than it is a church of where we have a bunch of body of believers that go into training and discipleship, and then we get equipped to go out and actually make disciples. There's nothing wrong with secular things, like playing basketball or football or whatever. But there is a problem with the church using it to attract people to the gospel.
Like don't sacrifice your ability to play basketball and go do this church, like.
This little church event,
Yeah,
like
right,
whitewater
like-
rafting.
Like
It's
if you do that, you're going to be around people that are already Christians, which that's not a bad thing.
It's
at
a
all.
good thing,
Surround
yeah.
yourself with people like that, but don't sacrifice your mission field out here
Exactly.
or something like that because they're
Exactly.
trying to compete with this. And like I'm not sitting here like, oh, I was at church all the time
Right.
when I was in high school. Like I mean, y'all, there was times where
Yeah.
I missed for this or that, and like I understand that when you're that busy, sometimes you might have to miss. Which I'm not saying do it all
Well-
the time and make those excuses, but
as a worship leader and a music minister, majority of my time is spent working on, of course, the music for the corporate worship services. But then we also have Christmas,
Right.
Easter. We would bring.
4th of July.
We're not getting on that again.
It wasn't on my calendar as a church holiday, but there's Christmas, there's Easter. We would have, especially during COVID when we weren't able to have large gatherings, we would bring guests, artists,
Yeah.
musicians, and things in. So I guess basically you're looking at entertainment.
It's exactly what it
call
is.
that- let's just call it what it's entertainment.
The church
But-
has turned into an entertainment center.
There's no way the church has the resources and the talent that the entertainment industry
Exactly.
has. So my focus was always on music and the lyrics and the
Right.
message in the song. I had one church when I got there, before I got there, my predecessor, one of the things he was known for was this huge outdoor Easter extravaganza.
Yeah.
And musical theater is not my lane. I recognize it for what it is, and
Yeah.
the people that are blessed and fortunate to do that. I just have no interest in it.
Yeah.
And anytime that I have seen churches try to do the musical production, it just is sad
Yep.
because it just comes across, unless you've got the $1 million budget and you're a mega church, because there is a church out in California who would do a 4th of July service, because I watched one year, and at the end, I mean, they had the flag unfurled from the baptistry, and Marines were coming down from the ceiling.
Golly.
And I mean, they've got the budget to put that
Right.
kind of thing on, but most churches don't have that.
Yeah.
And that
And it shouldn't
stretches
matter.
my focus, and I'm like, the drama doesn't matter.
Right.
What I'm focused on is the message and the lyrical content of the message of the songs we're trying to
Exactly.
present. Because there's no way I'm going to compete with Broadway or Disney
Right.
or any of those.
We can't. If the church continues to try to compete with the secular world, we will lose.
Right.
We have to change our strategy. Our strategy just needs to be basic: the gospel. That's it. Let's talk about discipleship. You know, there's too many people that think, oh, discipleship, Sunday school. No. We're going to a church right now where they do some sort of discipleship on Wednesday nights, but they don't call it discipleship because it's not. What they do is they get you in these round tables and you're talking with everybody, and they're all talking about, okay, what is a disciple? What have you done to make a disciple? Who is discipling you? And they have conversations about that, and it's like, that is what we're doing. That's what we're supposed to be doing. And it's like they weren't discipling each other in that table. You know, maybe they were making a relationship to where they could do that, but that's not the goal. The goal was to talk about discipleship and say, hey, let's get to doing this, because right now we have a bunch of Christians that just show up to church and they're like, oh, there you go.
Right.
And then go out and make
I'm a
disciples.
Christian.
We're
That's
going
it.
to teach you what this is, equip you to do it, and then
Yep.
send you out.
I know these church words, and I'm good to go.
Right.
You know, and one of the questions that I have is, how do we change ministry for the people instead of changing people for the ministry? Like, our ministries need to be about people and not the other way around. I've been to too many churches where it's all about numbers. We're trying to do ministry for the people that are Christians because we want them to be trained and then they go out. But instead it's, hey, everybody come to the church.
Let the pastor do the heavy lifting, or
Exactly.
the youth pastor.
Or,
the
I did
worship leader.
evangelism. I invited somebody to church. You know, you go to a worship service, and I've done this multiple times, and I've had people raise their hand and said, okay, if you've shared the gospel with somebody in the last year, raise your hand. Less than half will raise their hand.
Well,
and then you drop it to 6 months and lower and lower and lower, and you just keep raising that bar. And
lowering the bar.
Or lowering the bar, I guess.
Till you get to in the last 30 minutes. Have
And
you
it's
done
like
anything?
nobody does it. Nobody knows how to do it because we don't train people.
What do you want the listener to get out of everything we just said in their personal walk with Christ?
So the church needs to back off of their secular strategies. That's what we need to do. Stop trying to win people over with the world. Stop trying to like what you did with that baseball a minute ago, where you wrapped it up and you packaged it, and you're like, okay, here it is.
And the ball gets lost in the package.
Exactly. So we need to make the gospel more simple. It doesn't need to be, oh, well, to be saved, you have to be here every time the church doors are open. And it's like, no, to be saved, you need to believe. But then you want to actually have a relationship with Christ.
A genuine encounter with Jesus.
Yeah, but most people don't have a relationship with Christ. They don't understand it. They have a religion, and they just show up to church, and that's it.
Okay, so like when he did the baseball thing, you talked about like packaging it up and stuff, but you said the gospel needs to be simple. So what would you like? Are you saying that the packaging around the baseball is like these secular things?
Yes, that's the problem.
So, but the simple gospel is the baseball itself.
Right.
Okay.
And just share that with them. It doesn't need to be packaged up. It doesn't need to be doctored. It doesn't need to be changed. Let's just keep it with what it is, and make it simple. The gospel is difficult enough on its own, and what I mean by that is it's simple to understand, but it's hard to believe. You know, you look at all the other religions in the world, and you could tell they're man-made because they make sense. You know, you do good and you get good. You know, if you do good enough, then you get something good. But Christianity's not that way at all. It's you're the worst, terrible person on the planet, but that's okay. You can still be saved.
Right.
You know, it doesn't make manly sense, which is why Christianity is so different. So let's. It's difficult enough to do it on our own. It's hard to believe that God will forgive me of whatever I do, no matter what.
Well, and you can keep stacking all this evidence up for Jesus and all this stuff, but they're still going to require that leap of faith to get you all the way. And, you know, there's, like you just said, Christianity is a lot different than anything else out there.
Be a little intentional about where you go and what you do. Like there was, we're going back a few years now, had a friend who wanted to go to a music festival. And so took him and one of his friends, we went to this festival, which was a secular music festival. And either the week before or the week after, there was a Christian music festival, kind of the same type thing, in Kentucky. And we got back from that festival, and that was a whole that's the first time I've been to anything like that. But I'm thinking, you know, that was the mission field.
Right.
You know, I'm sure the Christian music conference was great,
Yeah.
but the opportunities for evangelism and sharing the gospel were greater at this secular festival. than-
Exactly.
So just be a little more intentional about
Well, and all the gospel sharing these days is done in the church, and you're
Right.
already speaking to people that should already be past the stage of accepting Jesus. And it
Exactly.
needs to go outside of the walls, like we've said so
Well,
many times.
And I think that was one of the big reasons that God allowed this COVID pandemic to shut everything down, was
Right.
to get us to go out of the building.
The church is going to die. If we continue on the road that we are going, the church will die. And I'm not the only one that says that. There's plenty of other people that I've talked to that they say the exact same thing. The church is going in a downward spiral, and it's because they're not willing to adapt, but two, they've made this something different that it's not supposed to be. We've got too much going on in the church that has nothing to do with Jesus. We've made a show. It's all about entertaining people,
Entertainment.
and it's not about training people.
And that was my conviction coming out of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I could see just going right back to doing what we had always done. And my spirit was just like, I can't do that.
Right.
I was told to do better.
Exactly.
And again, it all comes down to the individual. How are you going to be better?
Right.
Because we can sit here and talk about church needs to do this, church needs to do that, but it starts with the individual.
Right. And see, individuals need to, people don't need to be listening to this podcast to be like, oh, yeah, I agree with that. You need to be intentional and actually do something about it. Make a change in your life to go forward to whatever you're supposed to be doing. Pray. Talk to God. We need to listen. We need to do whatever he's telling us to do, which is go out. It's not stay, it's go.
Yeah, don't be comfortable.
Yes. Oh, man. We are way too comfortable as Christians.
Oh, absolutely.
I've talked to people that are overseas, and a lot of missionaries that'll come over here, and they talk about how the best thing for American Christianity is for Christianity to become illegal, because that would get rid of all the non-believers that are pretending to be Christians. The people that are just, they identify as Christian.
Right.
They're not actually believers.
And a lot of them don't even know that.
Right.
Something about separating the sheep from the goats and the
Yep.
wheat from the...
Wheat from the tares.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spoken from the nice one.
That's right. I am the nice one.
Well, I think that about wraps it up.
That was a good conversation.
Yeah. We'll jump on a little bit more next week. But yeah, we hope you guys will join us next week.
We'll
Thank
have
you.